before we start today's event. Niagara College acknowledges that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and was within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous peoples. So without further ado, I would like to now pass it over to our guests, NC's own Ali Ryder, her mom, Ellen Fro Schmidt, story to come, moderator Bruin Pohl, Rainbow Nights Club president. So take it away, team.
I get to go first. I get to introduce Bruin to everyone. Bruin is a passionate advocate for 2 SLGBTQ+ rights and youth mental health. He is also a proud resident of Niagara who enjoys standing up for others and being the voice of change. Bruin serves as the president of the Niagara College Rainbow Nights Club, which champions diversity, tolerance, and acceptance for all students. He works tirelessly to promote change, collaborating with various departments at Niagara College to foster a more inclusive environment for all students. Bruin also advocates for marginalized students within his club and actively engages with others to also promote inclusivity and acceptance. His outstanding character and unwavering dedication to promoting social justice serve as an inspiration to those around him to continue the fight for inclusion and diversity. Bruin successfully led his club to win the 2023 Pride Niagara Outstanding School / GSA Unity Award, which was presented last week. Driven by his desire to serve his community in a greater capacity, Bruin is currently pursuing pre-health sciences at Niagara College, where he is working towards acceptance into the paramedic program, where he hopes to one day make a lasting impact on his community as a paramedic.
So I get to go next, and I get to introduce one of our biggest club cheerleaders and someone who I call a dear friend, Ali Ryder. Ali Ryder has always been passionate about helping others and completed her first degree in recreation and leisure studies at Brock University. Working in long-term care for 10 years, Ali discovered her love for volunteering, starting in palliative care, and often felt like she was teaching the seniors in the recreation program. So she returned to school to obtain her bachelor's of adult education. While volunteering with Women's Place of South Niagara as the vice president of the board of directors, Ali met multiple staff from Niagara College. And shortly thereafter, she started teaching part-time in the recreation therapy program. From the success experienced in teaching, Ali was asked to move into the academic advising role for community services and thrived in the opportunity to empower and inspire many students at NC. Ali encouraged the students to start the school's first 2 LGBTQ+ social club, and also assisted local politicians in creating an advisory council. Due to Ali's commitment in bettering her community, she was awarded a Canada 150 Volunteer Award from MP Vance Badaway. Moving into a simulation position with Niagara College, Ali designed and developed a dementia training and continued volunteering and participating with the annual Rank and Run. She joins the NC team for the Big Cancer Ride every year, and most recently as a volunteer led with the Canada Summer Games. Ali was recognized for her positive attitude, welcoming nature, and kindness with the Niagara College Champion Award, and has since joined the recruitment team in an outreach and education coordinator position, where she provides information to high school and mature students about their exciting options in studying at Niagara College. Ali continues to be involved with the student body, teaches part-time, and shares how she leverages her diversity with high school students, encouraging them to do the same. Ali has continued to pursue education and recently completed her Master's of Education in Leadership.
Thanks, Bruin. I edited that and you didn't read the most recent one. That was more than needed to be said. Thank you very much. I have the pleasure of introducing everyone to my mother, Ellen Fro Schmidt. Many of you know her. Fro, I can't tell you how many people are in this room right now that you don't even recognize how you know them. So it's awesome. I'm very proud to introduce my mom and happy that she's able to join us today. So Ellen Schmidt is lovingly known as Fro by most people because of a nickname that my sister and I gave her back when she had a fro in the 80s and 90s. Okay, it was an epic perm, and even her license plates say "I am Fro." So that's not a slight. That is absolutely the name that everybody goes by, knows her by. So Fro was born and raised in Port Colborne, and she is a vibrant, active woman, giving a new definition to what an 80-year-old looks like, because nobody believes me when I tell them, okay? She also does not act her age by no means. So I think I get that from her as well too. Fro is actively involved in both her church and community events. And although she's slowed down her volunteering in recent years, Fro has previously volunteered with Equine Ability Therapeutic Riding Charity as their bookkeeper and board member. She's been involved in the Pelham Community Church, Central United Church in Welland, of course, Women's Place Book Riot fundraising committee member. I don't know how she got involved in that. And then she was always a food sorter with Open Arms Mission, which is actually the charity that we all walk for in the coldest night of the year every year. So that's great. That's awesome. Without formal post-secondary education, in the 1950s, choices were limited often for females to nursing, teaching, or secretarial. So wanting to be like her aunt, Fro chose commercial and secretarial and focused on learning administrative skills. Fro worked with the OPP. She worked with Inco. She owned and operated a very successful exporting business and finished her career working with the town of Pelham. Again, very well known in the town that she lives and works in. Fro was early to adopt computers in her own business and always eager to learn more about technology. She attended night courses at Niagara College when computers were in their infancy. I can remember that vaguely. And in her retirement years, after she spent time golfing and traveling, Fro took time and moved her actual 97-year-old mother, my grandmother. She took her and moved her into her own house and provided care for her for 13 months. At that point, Grandma had Alzheimer's disease. She was nonverbal. She was in a major Broda lift. She needed a hospital bed and a mechanical lift. And Fro didn't even bat an eye at getting all this equipment and taking care of Grandma until she passed away. Which was actually the day after Christmas. So we all got together, had Christmas dinner together, and Grandma passed away the next day in her sleep, and we could all be so lucky. So not only to end her life in your loving house, Fro, being taken care of by the people that loved her. So Fro regularly supports Niagara College student initiatives, and she actually attended a third age learning session at Niagara College where they were taught about dispelling myths about cannabis. They were taught about technology, data mining, and she was actively involved in this third age learning. So everyone that knows Fro knows that she's the first one to donate money for a cause. She mostly gives gifts, which she wins in auctions. So she bids on something going, oh, that's Allie's present. That's her birthday. That's her, and she knows. So everybody win, win, win with Fro. She's got 2 kids, myself and my sister. She's got a whole bunch of furry grand pets. And she actually helps out with the neighborhood kids as well, too. So you're a faux grandma to a lot of people as well. She's instilled the idea of giving back in me and is the reason I am who I am today. So welcome, Fro, and thanks for joining us today once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. So I think we're going to dive right into the biggest question and the biggest reason we're here today. Obviously, we're here because of Pride Month as well. But my understanding is Allie and Fro, you guys had a story published a couple years ago. I want to say 2-3 years, something like that ago. Correct me if I'm wrong. About your guys' story together. And I think it would be fair to say that we would like to know a little bit more about that story. I guess we could start with you, Allie, and you can kind of explain that story to us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Bruin. It actually was published last year, although this idea came from Fro 2 years ago. That's where it originated, because the small paper in Pelham was doing a weekly feature throughout the month of June to hear the story about growing up in Fonthill in a small town. And so Fro was emailing me the links to the articles and said, hey, why don't you write a female perspective? It had all been, male identified individuals submitting their stories. So And I was just really busy at the time. So I said to Fro, hey, why don't you submit it? You're a mother of an identified individual. So you should write it. And she's like, no, I'm not writing it. No, absolutely not. So it struck me the next year. It was June and I was sitting around. I wasn't as busy. I wasn't in school anymore. So I thought, oh, I'll write that story, but I'm going to write it about Fro because she didn't want to tell her story herself. So really, I kind of penned it as a story of us that I had to learn. Because again, I grew up in a time, and we'll get to that, where, there was not a lot of visibility. So I needed to go on a journey myself. But what I found was Fro had to go on a journey with me because, she didn't ask to have to learn about all this. She didn't want necessarily to have to deal with the backlash that may arise from my lifestyle. So, I wanted to really focus on how allies have to learn and grow and adapt. And it is, I'm fortunate that I have great support system around me all the time. But many people aren't. So I definitely wanted to tell that story. And especially for people that, we're well known. Fonthill Pelham is a small town. And like I said, Fro worked at the town forever. I worked for the town one summer when I was in university. And so people know us. And I wanted to share that story about her growth and it was lighthearted at the same time, of course, because it's Fro and I, but that's what led me to write the story. And I really wanted to kind of just talk about how we both grew together to where we are now.
It sounds like it was a very interesting story, and I've also read it. Like I said, I know you sent it to me last night. It was part of my bedtime routine that I did last night. It was a very inspirational story. I don't know if anybody hasn't read it, read it. I think it was also tagged in, or it was a part of that, the registration link, people were able to read it. But I guess I'd like to ask you, Fro, what did you think about the article? Specifically, what did you take out of it? Yeah.
I was rather embarrassed when I first read it because I felt it was too much about me, and I just like to stay in the background. Anyway, it was her life that we were having to get through. And I was just along as her mother to help her along the best I could, just as I would have been if this hadn't happened. But I had a lot of people speak to me and tell me how wonderful the story was. And most of them were the women, because I mostly have women friends, but a lot of the men spoke to me and said that was very nice. And the one made a lot of jokes about me. So he's always kidding me, but I'm just proud of her and how she handled things and what she has become today.
It sounds like
Sure.
it was a very positive. It sounds to me like it was a very at first it was kind of a little bit of a journey at first, kind of dealing and reading with the article, but it sounds like in the end all of the nervousness, I guess I could say, there's a lot of positive things that came out of that article. So kind of that the worry and that kind of, when you read that article, kind of subsided, and a lot of people kind of came out and said, you know what, that article, or that story rather, I shouldn't even be calling it an article, it's a story, it's an inspirational story, it needed to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, Ali, do you think it was a positive response? I know I'm kind of suggesting it probably was, just because I read the article, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, basically, we did not hear anything negative. I know a lot of people spoke to Fro, but my email, I was inundated. And then, of course, Niagara College shared it, and they picked it up and shared it across the line as well, too, which was great. And, really the majority of the people that are here today, I spoke to because of that. So the response was incredibly positive, and just people, even Kent Reynolds to this day, he goes, because of that story, your mother, I love your mother. I don't even know your mother, and she's awesome. So great question, Angela. I'm going to take that just because I was overwhelmed. Nothing was said that shocked me or surprised me in a negative way. I was pleasantly surprised by coworkers reaching out, emailing, saying, Ali, I'm dealing with this myself right now. So it was just reassuring to hear your story and your mom's story. And to be honest, Angela, the one thing that surprised me, there was a woman that got in touch with me that we grew up together, and she asked to get together. And I said, of course, that'd be great. And she came over to my house on Friday afternoon, enjoyed us on the patio. And I walked her out to her car, and I just thought she wanted to reconnect after reading that story. And she said, well, I really just want to make sure I didn't ever do anything disrespectful to you. Was I ever an issue growing? And I said, oh my goodness, no, of course not. And she said, Allie, one of my 4 daughters identifies under in the 2S LGBT plus rainbow. And she said, I just want to make sure that I didn't do anything. And it was so sweet, and it was from the heart. And that surprised me, because she's reflecting back on 35 years, that we knew each other, and just, wondering, what she did back then. And again, we didn't have the knowledge that we have today because of visibility. So yeah, it was surprising, at the same time, overwhelmingly surprising. So it was lovely.
That's good. I know for me, when growing up, I know it was very different as well. It was very accepting. I wouldn't say very accepting. It was getting there. It's obviously it's better now than even it was, when you were growing up. And it's a good thing that, people are kind of came out from, or not came out, but when this article was posted, the story, I'm going to have to stop really saying the article word. But people came and was like, I kind of find it cool, but awe-inspiring at the same time, that people were like, well, did I do anything wrong? It kind of, in a way, when you talk to somebody about an inspirational story about this and say, I didn't know, or, maybe I did know, but was I respectful, right? And that kind of is an educational piece in itself, because they want to make sure, they want to kind of validate, right, that, were they appropriate, right? But I don't want to dive into too much about that, because I know we're going to be diving into more about stuff like that later. But let's kind of go more into a deeper dive about the article, and kind of some of the topics that were covered in it. So I know that you have a dad and that you have a sister, and I know that there was really no mention in the article about them. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about your sister and your dad, and maybe why they weren't in the article.
And honestly, Bruin, the editor of the paper, asked me that at the same time, emailed me back and said, I'm just curious. There was no mention anywhere, right? And of course, now if I was talking about my sister, that would be a completely different story. I'll submit for another time. She's been nothing but supportive. I couldn't ask for a better, more supportive sister along this journey. I mean, an advocate for all of us. So that's a completely different story. Definitely wanted to focus on my mom and I. And to be honest, my mom and my dad, they separated when I was 13, and my sister went with my dad and I went with my mom, which was unorthodox at the time, which is probably why Fro and I are so close and bonded, because we were the 2 musketeers for the longest time. Unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 19. He had moved to New Jersey. I think my stepmom is on the call here somewhere, and we're still tight, but he wasn't really a part of my life, because unfortunately he was already gone by that point in time. So definitely just wanted to tell the story of Fro and I, and what we, our journey together. And we had a lot of support and family along the way as well too.
That's good. That's good to hear. I'm obviously, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. I'm sure he'd be very proud of, where you are today. Even doing an event like this. I'm sure he's watching over us right now. And, I think it's important, as I said, this story to, I understand that, maybe that was left out. And, I think that the fact that the story was able to kind of highlight a mother and daughter, which I never said this before, I think that's like a very unique approach to it, because you could do it from a family approach, but a mother and a daughter approach, it kind of, it's more personal. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. And, I think that's kind of inspiring in itself. And I think what we'll move on to Fro. So Fro, so Allie kind of has spoken about how parents, they support the 2S LGBTQ plus individuals like yourself, but is there anything that you think that you need to learn or grow to understand? And can you speak kind of on your own journey as well in acceptance and advocacy? Has there been anything, I guess, specifically that you struggled with, to kind of, kind of guide this new journey that you're on with your daughter?
Well, I have to say that I was brought up by a good, loving family, and I was taught to love one another and respect others. And growing up in Port Colborne, I didn't know any gay people that I can remember, that it was obvious. And I didn't until I worked at Inco. And I ended up in the shipping department, and the man there running the shipping department was gay. He'd worked there his whole life. He was friends with everybody. He was a very funny man, great to work for, loved to tell us stories, and he brought very nice gifts when he'd been away on holidays. And he was just there, and nothing, like just ordinary relationship with him. Then I raised my kids and all, and when I separated, I needed to find a job again, and I ended up working for another man from Toronto, but it was down in this area. He had married, he had 4 kids, and after he retired, he came out. His wife and kids wouldn't speak to him. The 4 kids, none of them spoke to him. And I felt so sorry for him because he was such a nice man, gentle, kind. Allie and I went to his place, his apartment in Toronto for dinner. I had to eat her fish soup when he was in the kitchen, but he took us to the show we were up there to see, the Joseph and the Amazing Color. Anyway, these people came into my life, and it was just an ordinary circumstance. I didn't think of them differently. They were just people. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, where they look at them like there's something different. Well, we're all just humans. We feel differently. So
I completely agree.
I love your stories, Fro.
We're all unique.
yes.
It doesn't matter, I know we're kind of going a little bit sideways in saying this, but I think, at the end of the day, and I think this is kind of the point of this event too, we're all here to learn, and we're human at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter. Sometimes I like to joke and call, we're the Rainbow Club, right? I sometimes because the 2S LGBTQIA+ acronym sometimes is so long, so I'll if you hear me say, if you say me hearing the Rainbow Club, that's what I'm referring to. But just because somebody's gay, lesbian or trans, we still bleed the same color. We still cook great food, or we love to go on runs and hang out with friends, and it doesn't make us any different than anybody else. And
no,
I think that's kind of what you learned from your coworker at that time, that I think that was also your journey. That's where, maybe would it be fair to say that's maybe where you started your journey too, in acceptance and learning?
I never figured it as acceptance. They just were people, and I worked with them, and I liked them, and I enjoyed their company. I never would have gone for dinner in Toronto, if I didn't care for the man.
Hey, Fro, and that's just it. The way you behave was exactly what we want everybody to do. And it's funny, you even mentioned earlier you were embarrassed with the story because you were my mother. But meanwhile, it's like, well, no, there's so much more to it that you need to see a different perspective. So just you saying, well, that's the way it was. Well, not everybody's like that, which is great, not everybody has an ally that doesn't see anything different. You don't see color, you don't see gender, you just see people, which is commendable. And you told the stories, of a couple of situations growing up. And then it wasn't until I was 19 that I told Fro. And the only reason I did, honestly, was a local doctor that, you know, I was having a drink with him one night and he said, your mother still doesn't know about you, Allie? And I was in university. I went, no, she doesn't. He goes, what are you? I wouldn't tell your mother. My goodness, like she has the right to know. And I went, you're absolutely right. And I mentioned him. I said, Dr. Richard, you know, like he in Font Hill, I know he lives there. And I just wanted to give him a shout out because just that simple little, just one sentence and it changed everything. Right. And so I went and I know I went to Fro's house and you were sitting in front of your computer. I went right to your fridge. I grabbed 2 beers and you're like, okay, I guess we're having a beer. I went, yeah, cheers. Here we go. And we had a conversation and I know your reaction. And again, this was going back 25 years ago. But your reaction was sadness and you were fearful because you didn't want me to have, I remember, I'll never forget, you said, I don't want you to struggle in life. I don't want you to have challenges and difficulties. You know, I remember specifically, that was your only concern. Because I said, why are you crying? And you were just concerned for me. And in fact, and I tell people that, and here we are 25 years later, sitting in a room in front of a handful of people and having this conversation that I never thought 25 years ago you would happen. When I got that award, you were standing up, cheering the loudest. There's my kid getting that LGBTQ award. Yeah, there, you know, and so for me, again, that's just you being my mom, that just comes second nature, but not always. So, you know, and that's, you know, kind of where our journey kept, you know, it took a shift, you know, it changed the way we thought, right? And you had to adjust and learn along the way. Bruin, I think I know you have a story. You got to take a second and share yours.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy. I think it's only, I think it, you know, from a generational kind of approach too, it's kind of unique with my story. You know, I know nowadays, I'm not saying it's perfect, you know, for youth coming out nowadays, it's definitely much easier than probably the 1980s and 90s. When I came out, oh God, goodness, it was definitely 16, 17, something like that. You know, and I originally came out bi to my parents. I hadn't really had that like a normal even relationship, I think, with a girl. And I just realized at some point, you know, I came back to them a couple months later and it was kind of when they said, okay, like, you know, they were, you know, my mom kind of, you know, she said to me, she said, you know, I kind of knew the year that you dressed up as a witch for Halloween that, you know, there was something a whack. And she said, you know, I always remember her one words, you know, she said, I'll love you regardless. She said, but she said, I have one stipulation. She says, I want grandkids. She says, figure it out. And my dad's response, and this is, keep in mind, this is when I came out bi. My dad's response was, are you sure? And we actually kind of joked about it. And I just made a rhetorical question to my dad. And I said, are you sure? And so I said, you know, we had a really, really good conversation about it. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, we hugged, you know, we talked about it more, you know, they said, you know, regardless, we don't care, you know, we love you for who you are. And it's important to note that, like, you know, I come from, you know, that, you know, Catholic family that, you know, has those deep religious roots. So, you know, it was a challenge in that regard, I think, for our family. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but the funny part is that a couple months later, I think it was either a couple months, because we're going back a couple years, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but it was either a couple months or a year or so later, I came back to my parents and I said, look, sit down again. I said, I'm not bisexual. I said, I'm gay. I said, deal with it. And they said, okay. And it was kind of a conversation. And I guess with my story, it's more, I wish that, you know, those conversations, it more happened like that in a household. And I know, unfortunately, there's other households that, you know, the conversations don't go that way. And, you know, that's where I kind of, you know, am thankful. And that's why I've jumped into, you know, all the advocacy that I do and try to be as loud as I can, because I know that at home, you know, I have cheerleaders that would probably walk downtown Pride with me saying he's single and he's gay, right? And
grandkids.
But, you know, again, you know, my parents, they were never, and again, I know my mom, actually, she is watching today. She didn't want to come on. Maybe I'll get her to come on next time, but I don't really think my parents really ever were concerned, really about, you know, would I have a normal life? They're more concerned about the fact of, you know, what's going on in the US, and, you know, that the hate, you know, my car being vandalized. Because if anybody doesn't know, my car is not very hard to find if I'm on campus. If you are an Niagara College student, it has 2 little pride flags on it, but those are more their concerns, right?
Yep.
And, you know, I think going into concerns, you know, I think I know Fro, you had mentioned a while ago that, or just a little bit ago, that you had kind of some concerns, and I'm just gonna kind of look at my notes real quick just to make sure I'm on the correct path. But yeah, so you had some concerns when Allie had come out, and about her, you know, potential difficulties that, you know, and challenges that she might have. And I guess, Allie, are those concerns justified? And I guess even a little bit of a twist, you know, are some of those were some of those concerns even maybe related to my parents' concerns? You know, make it maybe a kind of a multi-generational approach.
Yeah. Professionally, it's benefited me. And one good thing is, you know, a lot of us, and even Fro mentioned it about her friend, she said, oh, he was so funny. And you'll notice that there's a lot of very funny people under our rainbow. And it's often a defense mechanism, right? You're not going to hate the funny one. You're the funny one. People want to be around you, right? Which has helped. And Fro's warped sense of humor has also helped mold mine as well, too. And don't you do. I'm getting hashtag fish soup sent to me already over here. So I think that's going to be trending by the time we're done. Professionally, it was funny when I first got my very first job in long-term care. I was not out professionally. I was, you know, that wasn't a thing. I didn't want to be known as that. So I just went to work, and I worked in a long-term care facility that was predominantly German. I didn't speak German at the time. I speak a little bit now. And so every night after my session with the folks, I was doing recreation. I do a little program with them, and I go around and thank them all for participating and say goodnight. And again, you know, a lot of people were living with dementia. And there was this one lady who only spoke German, and I went over to say goodnight to her, and she went, gay. And I went, oh no. No. And she went, yay. Very like aggressive, angry, pointing. And then she got louder, and the nurse's station is right there. I am mortified. No, I'm fooling everybody. Don't say anything. Yeah, you know, and then I found out weeks later that just means go in German. She just didn't want me in her face. She wasn't outing me. She wasn't calling me a name, you know, so that always comes to mind. And I love telling that story to the high school students that I talk to when they ask me those questions. Did you face anything? I'm like, oh my goodness, the worst thing I ever happened to me. But at the same time, I also worked at a company where the president, he was taking me to meet some clients. And he came into my office the day before and said, okay, we're going to meet them tomorrow. Do you mind straightening up a bit for me, please? And he kind of winked and went, straighten up before we go there. And so I said, okay, not sure what that meant. So I put on a skirt and I did my best impression. I don't think I fooled anybody at that point in time. But I mean, it was so absurd, the request that came from and I didn't last very long there. Thank you very much, Christine. I saw you join that. You helped me get my resume in the door at Niagara College. So I was able to get out of that uncomfortable situation. But in terms of professionally, my diversity, my, you know, what scared Fro 25 years ago has been what has, you know, guided my successes. I have an intersection of being a cisgendered woman, identified lesbian, that gives me a perspective that sometimes people want to hear, which is great. And like I said, I try to encourage young people like yourself, Bruin, leverage this diversity, do what you can. I encourage the students to start the social club many years ago. And who did we meet at Pride this weekend? The original president, right? So the three of us have a picture together, you know, of just things that, and she worked for Toronto Pride afterwards. Had nothing to do with what she studied at Niagara College. It had to do with what she did outside of her studies.
Did we lose Allie?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, no, I can hear you again.
Okay. How long ago? Anyways, that's it.
Um,
I'm good.
I think I guess kind of like, oh, it looks like it's my internet that's unstable. Oops.
Yeah.
So I think, well, this is the challenges of doing stuff like this virtually. Unfortunately, we'll have to kind of work with it. But I guess to kind of like add to that, for me, like, in a workplace, I think, I've never, and I hope I never have to. I haven't really ever experienced that. I guess that hate. I'm gonna just jump and dive right into that word. You know, that I've always, as long as I can remember, I remember my very, very first job was a greenhouse, and then the job after that was kind of banquet serving, and I never really experienced any form of hate. People that, now again, I guess it's to say at the same time, I also wasn't really completely out at that time, but even nowadays, it's becoming more and more inclusive in businesses. Even the current company that I work for, they made a post on their social media about Black History Month. And so, I've been with them for a couple months now, and I was anxiously sitting here. I'm like, okay, they're gonna do something for June. And then when I finally got the notification, June 1st, Happy Pride, and they made an announcement about that, my heart kind of like was like, okay, like I can breathe, right? I'm at a company that kind of fosters inclusion, and and that's important, in businesses. Yes, businesses are there, to make money, and to service their customers, but at the same time, their employees are the ones that are helping them, be a business essentially, right? And they
Yeah.
need to be treated with dignity. And I think that in that regard, we're moving into the right direction.
But
And
it even burned the other day when Fro and I were chatting about this, and we were talking about something that had happened with me a long time ago at work. And Fro said, "Do you think that decision was made that had anything to do with you being gay?" And I went, "No, of course not. But you never know."
and that
And
that actually
that
just
thought,
reminded.
unfortunately, is still in the back of minds, because you have to wonder sometimes, if you're treated differently than the majority, why?
Well, that-
And
I was
it's
just gonna
still,
say,
it's unfortunate that it's still a thought. And I'm hoping someday it's just never going to be a consideration, that you're treated differently because of
yeah.
that, right?
And that kind of just reminded me of kind of what I was, what I was going to try to say before was, when you were told by it was your former employer, I'm assuming,
Yep.
to, straighten up. I don't know how many years ago that was. I'm hoping it wasn't very, very recent, but and again, we don't have to dive into that, but the whole, it's unfortunate that that was, said to you, right? Because, my whole thing would be like, and I think, we had a phone call conversation last night kind of before all of this, and this is kind of what you had mentioned, that, today's youth, and even, myself, if you were to come up to, a cashier, and they were to say, and I know we're going to go into pronouns later, this is just kind of going into what I'm trying to say, they spoke to that individual, that youth, and they misgendered them, right? And they're like, he, him. I go by he, him. The youth nowadays kind of have that strength a little more than I think maybe you growing up, to stand up and say, hey, I'm not going to straighten up, right? This is how I dress. This is who I am. If you don't like it, right, like, deal with it, right? And
It's cute, Bruin. You're not at a point where you have a mortgage yet. So maybe we can have this conversation in a few years, when you sometimes don't have a choice in life. And that's the other thing, is learning resilience.
Yeah.
But it was also helpful, the driving force, to go get a fabulous job. I mean, and trust me, when I started at the college, I was offered a part-time position, and I was a full-time manager at that company. So I gave up a full-time management with vacation, seniority, everything. I gave that up for a part-time position. So, I mean, all that did was just strengthen my resolve to go get a job where I was going to be happy and acknowledged and welcomed and celebrated. Look at where we are now, you know, this never would have happened. So there's hope, but again, circumstance, please.
And resilience is definitely something to keep in mind too. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, you know, you can't unfortunately go expecting everybody to accept you as much as we would love that. You know, unfortunately, there is, you know, the select few, the bad apples, I like to call them, that, you know, we should try to avoid, you know, sometimes unfortunately for our safety. And you know, I mean, even going into, you know, a mortgage, unfortunately, also with today's economy, I probably won't be able to afford a mortgage for another 20, or a house for that matter, for another 20 years. But my dad keeps nagging me. He's like, so when are you going to move out? And I'm like, well, you moved out when you were 31. So what? I got 41.
That's
Add
awesome.
another 10 years onto it. But yeah, that's, it's, you know, I think that's great. And, you know, I think that part of it needs to be told, the resilience part of it. You know, I've grown up during that time where, you know, the Me Too movement, and, you know, where we also need to kind of focus at that, you know, let's kind of stand up at the same time, but it's about standing up at the appropriate times as well. And unfortunately, when to kind of simmer it down and, you know, hush up a little bit, you know, for your own safety, right? But I guess I do have a little question. If I don't know if maybe you wanted to add anything to that, Ali, or I'm gonna maybe go and ask Fro a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So Fro, I know you've done a lot at Niagara College. You've attended, you've been Ali's cheerleader. I've seen you, I think this is our third time we've met now. I know I saw you at the flag raising. I believe there was a second, I don't know if you came to Pride in the Campus or Pride in the Park, but I know, you know, you've done a lot of learning sessions at Niagara College, and, you know, as you are today, you're wanting to continue to learn and go down that advocacy path, and you know, just learning about inclusion and diversity. And you know, your generation, you know, obviously, I think, you know, if I was to add my opinion in, has it the hardest to learn. You know, there's
well, you get old and you don't want to change.
Exactly. And, you know, I unfortunately have family that, you know, have no interest in, you know, wanting to, you know, to change, right? And I'm always a firm believer that one can always learn, and you're learning every day, I guess, is my point. And how can I guess my question is your generation, how do you think we could, or how you could increase acceptance of the 2S LGBTQI community, you know, specifically?
Well, I just live life every day, and when an opportunity arises, which happened this past weekend with the Pride event at Montebello Park, and I was looking after 3 children, and the one was going to be shopping, and I had to entertain the 2 boys, 12 and 10. So I said, we're going to go say hi to Allie at Montebello Park. So after we parked the car and we're walking there, I said to them, do you know what pride is? And Ryan, the one said, well, that's being proud. I said, yes. I said, honestly, I don't know whether PRIDE stands for anything, but yes, it's being proud. But I said, we're going to see people who feel differently and think differently. And some are going to be just ordinary people, and others are going to be maybe a little outrageous, not what you're used to seeing. So we got there and we saw a variety of people, but what they loved a lot was the man walking on the stilts. I mean, they just had a normal good time. But to me, this was opening up to them what they're going to see in the future when they attend college, university, go to work. You're going to meet people who feel differently, and there's no reason to be afraid of them. They're not mean or anything. You accept them for being different, and have fun, because so many of the people I have met and have had at my dinner table are so funny and tell great stories. And I just wanted these boys, I don't think their parents would have taken them to this, but I wasn't told not to. Not that I told her I was, but they found it fine,
So I
but
think
that's a teaching moment. That's moving on.
so it'd be fair to, I think, say, the best approach would kind of be, obviously, number one would be, the approach of knowledge, but individuals wanting to learn and,
Yep.
wanting, again, the word wanting to learn, and being open to change and a different, I guess, reality of maybe when your generation was younger. And unfortunately, I think, though, when we're having these conversations, we have to unfortunately kind of come to the reality that there's unfortunately individuals that aren't open to learning. Like I mentioned, I do have family that have no interest.
Yep.
But what you're doing, Fro, I think, even if you're in a grocery store, right? And I think this goes for anybody, listening today, if somebody simply asks and says, asks a simple question, right, about, pronouns and being misgendered. And if you have that knowledge talking about it, even from somebody who identifies as being gay, if somebody was to stop me and students have stopped me and asked me about allyship, I don't find it offensive at all. I find it as a great learning opportunity, which is what you're doing, Fro, in trying to educate people that actually they want to learn. And when we talk about, I think, allyship later, that's what allyship is: asking questions, being open to learning, and trying to get out of that that perfect view that I think families for hundreds of years have bestowed on us, and kind of getting out of that vicious circle into a more accepting and diverse society.
Well, the thing is, in the old days, the families hid it.
Well, and again, that's a conversation we always have with my dad's side of the family. Even with mental health, it was always
It was
swept under the
hidden.
rug.
Don't talk about it.
No.
Yeah.
And my cousin, he's an RN with the St. Catherine's Hospital, and like I am very open and loud about LGBTQ rights. He's become recently very loud about mental health, specifically around Movember and men's health and stuff like that. And we need more people like that, but we also need more people like you, Fro, that are willing to stop and talk to people in the grocery store, even during Pride Month, and saying, hey, I saw, that you're a supporter, just having that dialogue, that's extremely important, because that fosters that acceptance, that inclusion, that learning, that we need in society today.
Yes. Yep.
I thank you for that.
Hey, Vern, we just have I don't know if you have your chat open, but there are actually some questions, and I think we'll just take a chat a second to maybe address some of these. Angela, by all means, Dean Budd, if you'd like to unmute yourself, Fro and I would love to answer any questions you have about the mother-daughter relationship.
Do we have Angela still there?
Sure she's
Host needs to unmute me.
okay. I'm on it. Sorry, Angela. Where are you? Here you are.
I am unmuted now, I think.
There you are.
So yes, I do have a couple of questions, but I've already had the opportunity to ask questions. So I'd love for Laura and somebody else asked a question as well to be able to go first, and then put me on
Okay,
the spot.
awesome. Okay, for sure. I see Laura Miani was curious about, in terms of college students. I know Laura is full-time faculty. Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. And what are common challenges for college students when promoting inclusivity and diversity, and what can faculty do to help? Laura, I also instruct part-time as well too. And it wasn't until about halfway through the term where there was always a student in the front row and something was said just off the key. And I just went, I'm sorry, what pronouns do you go by? And the student went, they, them. And I went, oh my goodness, why you could have corrected me, you know, and just with the best of intentions. So I know that one time, you know, often, as Fro mentioned as well too, that we, you know, misgender by accident. You know, you're not aware maybe that they identify under different pronouns. And by no means do we expect you to remember everybody's. That's certainly not our expectation. And if you ever do just make that error, just go, oh, sorry, apologize, and then move on. Don't make a big deal about it. That's something always. If you, from a perspective, I know Bruin and I, we both virtually joined a class one day just to chat. I wanted him, it was a fitness and health promotion class. They were doing a topic on diversity, and definitely wanted to introduce Bruin to the class, where, you know, one of the students said, how do I learn more about this? And Bruin said, come to our club. By all means, join the club. We welcome allies as well too. And it's a good opportunity to get to know people, a safe place to ask questions. Events like these, ask the questions, you know. Bruin, what do you think from your perspective as a current college student? What do you think are some common challenges for the students?
Well, I'd actually like to point out that Laura is actually my professor too. So
yeah,
I think it's kind of a unique perspective at the same time. But you know, I think for me, you know, again, me as an individual, I have it a little bit more easier. I'm not your classic textbook case because, you know, I've got all that life experience and whatnot and that mumble jumble. But for, I think, a student that, you know, was struggling or, you know, is struggling to come out, and, you know, as an example, you know, I think just listening, you know, if you notice one of your students, you know, struggling, or, you know, not being attentive, you know, maybe you notice a behavior change. I know those are maybe, you know, little things that you would expect high school or, you know, elementary school teachers to kind of monitor, but those could be, you know, changes, you know, that could be concerning. You know, maybe they are going through something at home. And I think just, you know, simply going up to that student and asking them, is everything okay? Right? Just a simple question, give them the opportunity to come to you and talk. And you know, kind of by doing that, you're telling that student that you want to listen and that you're there for them, even during, you know, not even academically, right? You're there for them if they need their support. And, you know, obviously if there is other concerns, you know, passing information on to HWAs and stuff like that too. You know, I always tell my club members, you know, and again, that's something that I keep a lookout on too. You know, I've always created, I guess what you call an open door policy, right? And I guess that's where I'm getting at, you know, that's, I think, where you could help with that inclusivity and that diversity by just listening.
And honestly, as well too, another faculty connected a student with me and said, Hallie, do you mind? And I said, no. And I connected the student with the club. Even just saying to the student, you know, oh, I recently attended a Living Library series for Pride Month, and I understand we have a social club. Even just having the knowledge that there's a social club for the students, many people aren't aware of that. So just even your attendance here and your support is phenomenal, and we need more Laura Mianis out there. Trust me. Okay. And Angela's agreeing. Absolutely. I understand we have outside guests who joined us as well too. So thank you very much, Kim Krause, for joining us today. I know you have a special connection to the group here, and thank you very much for indicating that, flying the flag very proudly. It's nice to see across everywhere we go. I know it was a conversation before. Somebody said to me, well, don't you just feel businesses are checking the flag, checking the box? And I went, let them check the box. I don't care. Check the box. I don't care, as long as it's visible. You know, you see the go buses and their full pride. That wasn't something that happened years ago. So just great. Check the box. I went into Shoppers, and there's, you know, we're proud this month. Everywhere you go, you see it.
There's actually, I'd like to kind of add one quick thing to that. I just saw a post Peel region. So there's a Peel paramedic ambulance that they recently decaled. And it's got kind of basically from the front driver's side wheel all the way to the back. It's a cool little design of the progressive pride flag all the way across. So it's going to actually be in the Toronto Pride Parade, but little things like that too. And I had a privilege, actually, I never told Ali, Pride, the Pride in the Park. I had an extremely good conversation with Niagara EMS, and you know, about them being there, and he kind of said one thing that out of our, I think I bored him for the 45 minutes that we talked, but we had a very good conversation. But the one thing that stuck out was visibility for businesses and visibility. And, you know, I think even going back to Laura's question, visibility is extremely important, and recognizing the hurdles that our community has gone through and kind of celebrating us, but at the same time, you know, visibly supporting us, right? So not just saying you support us, but even as a business, flying the pride flag outside your business or saying in front of people, I support, you know, this community. That's important, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I know it was mentioned, we mentioned how involved Fro was in her church, still is. Honestly, without me, I don't believe there's any backlash. Fro is also married to the minister. So there better not be backlash.
But if it was 99, I wasn't married to him yet. But everyone knew me well enough, they wouldn't say anything. And they loved you. I mean, you grew up in the church, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yep, no, to answer that question, no backlash. And also United Church is Fro's religion.
Well, the
so
minister at that church now is gay, so,
your husband?
and married.
He's long retired. One other thing. Oh, Colleen Bader mentioned this. Colleen is an amazing teacher from Delhi District. I also work out in Haldeman, Norfolk. And I have to mention, I was invited to join the Rainbow Prom in Haldeman a few weeks ago as a chaperone, because I do get to engage with these individuals, these students out in that area. Colleen, her and her partner own a fabulous artisan cheese shop, and she held a pride event on the weekend for the community. And it was, you can't ask for a better ally than that lady, and what a wonderful support, and I'm happy to call her a friend. So thank you very much for those nice words to my mom, Colleen. Your support and friendship mean a great deal to me, and thank you for including me all the time in everything that you do. It's nice I get a free show without paying for a ticket, really, with what you do. You're amazing. Angela, you ready to fire away? Can I get a host to unmute Dean Butt, please? There we go.
Thank you. So thank you for taking the question, and hopefully this doesn't turn into a Angela therapy session, but maybe it'll help other people. I was surprised and reflective / concerned, Ali, when you said it took you some time to come out to your mom. So my daughter and I have a super open relationship. Part of that comes from being a nurse. So we've talked about every bodily function under the sun at the dinner table from the time she was 2. But I would expect that if she wanted to share something, she would feel comfortable doing that. But maybe I'm being naive and fooling myself. So I'm wondering, are there barriers I should be eliminating in doing that? Is there something I can make it? And quite frankly, she's not stated one way or the other, nor has she dated anybody. So I really have no indicator. But because your mom is so open and
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome is a good word. I wonder what was the barrier.
I mentioned it in the article, and I often talk to the students about that. And I'm happy that really generation now really doesn't have to come out as much.
Okay.
And it's, you know, from a heterosexual perspective, Angela, at what age did you sit down with your parents and tell them that you were straight and attracted to men? Right?
I can actually tell you that, but go ahead.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Of course you can. Okay, so most people don't do that. And for me, it's like I didn't want to have to sit down and tell my mother who I was attracted to. It wasn't a conversation that needed to happen from my perspective. And it really wasn't until my partner at the time, her and I were moving into a house, and Dr. Richard said to me, "Ali, you're moving in with 4 people into a 4-bedroom house, but you're only using 3 bedrooms. How are you going to explain that to Fro?" And that's what, you know, and that's where that came from. So it was just, at the time I was on my own. It just wasn't something that I needed to involve her with until that time, you know, and what often, and I mentioned to a student the other day when we were chatting about her challenges, You know, it's just something that if it's an awkward conversation. You
Parents don't have
maybe-
sex. That's
My
the
mother's
rule.
not a nurse, and nor am I, and we don't talk like
Yeah. And just a couple of observations. One, I really, really, Fro, love the idea of you taking those boys to the Pride event, because I think there's something to be said for advocacy through fun, as opposed to some of the adversarial reactions to conversations. So I think every time we have an opportunity to invite somebody to something fun that for children before they even have their biases in place, and for others kind of to get things, something, sneak it in under the radar in a more palatable way, I think it might make it less, like I said, adversarial, and they're in it and accepting before they even know it. And the other thing is just a comment that in talking about my daughter, I learn a lot from her in terms of vocabulary. If it weren't, she's my own personal urban dictionary, and what's okay to say versus what's not, because as I get older, I'm less and less tuned in to what's hip and happening, clearly. So just a comment that the more we talk to our youth, I think the more current we stay in terms of what's okay to say and how to have that conversation or whatever. But thank you for taking my verbal questions.
No worries.
Thanks, Angela.
So I think if we have any other, I think there might have been a couple other questions, but we can save them. I think at what, 2:30 we were going to open up for some more questions.
Yep.
I just I know there was one question I think Fro wanted to ask me. I don't know. I'm just looking here.
I think we wanted to, I know you mentioned about misgendering, and it was a conversation that Fro and I had the other day again, just in preparing for this. We spent a lot of time together. It's been wonderful. She just asked about, you know, pronouns, and she said, "Owie, I don't get it." And you know, and there's some things, and I don't, and I said, "That's okay, Fro, that's absolutely okay." And the way I wanted to explain it to you in terms of just growing up a tomboy in the 80s, I got stopped at the women's bathroom more times than not in a public place. Let's assume I probably had a hat on, which I'm surprised I don't have now, and a hoodie. I haven't changed much. So I would get stopped at the bathroom to say, this is the girls' room. And I didn't correct adults. You didn't correct adults. I was just polite, put my head down and scurried away and held it. And the same thing is happening to my best friend, his 15-year-old daughter who identifies female. Unfortunately, you know, she has the same experiences. What happened, Bruin alluded to it before, was just a colleague said to two little girls that ran up to our table, "Oh, hi girls, would you like a button?" And I said, "Hi, I'm Allie. I identify she, her. What about you?" And the little girl looked at me and said, "She, her." And then the other one said, "He, him," because he had this long, curly, blonde, beautiful surfing hair, but she just misgendered him. And so my coworker went, "Oh my goodness, oh my God." I said, "It's okay." I looked at the young man and I said, "You know, you're allowed to tell adults, I identify he, him." I said, "You have language now that I didn't have, that isn't offensive. You're not talking back. It's not uncomfortable, because you don't, you know, it's uncomfortable to say I'm a girl. You know, it's just, it was easier to walk away." So for me now, it's improving our ability to communicate effectively. And for that little 8-year-old looked at me and said, "Okay," grabbed the button and ran away. But maybe that'll stick in that person's mind to say, next time it happens, because it's going to happen, to say, I identify he, him. And if that language in terms of pronouns existed 35 years ago, you know, it would have been a different experience for me. So I'm happy that we go by the pronouns. If we make a mistake, we just go, "Oh, sorry, move on. It's okay. We're not perfect." And then just do it out of love and respect, right?
And I think that's exactly what it is. Like, you know, with the club that I run, you know, we actually, we have a whole list of all of our members' names and the preferred pronouns that they go by. And because of the sheer amount of numbers that we have, I always tell my vice president, I'm like, slap me every time that I accidentally misgender somebody. And there's a difference between intentionally misgendering somebody and accidentally misgendering somebody. you know, it's a learning curve. And even when I grew up, pronouns weren't a thing. Pronouns really, really took off during COVID and kind of now post-COVID. And it's a learning curve for everybody. You know, for Fro's generation, for those that want to learn, you know, your generation, my mom and my dad's generation. I think the people, the generation that has it the easiest is the current generation, because they're going to be the most used to it. And you know, I know last night I kind of explained to you too, Ali. It's actually kind of cool, even with pronoun. Everybody knows the he, him, his, the he, her, hers, the they, them, them, the they, them, theirs. But there's also he, they, she, they now as well that I've been noticing coming out. And I know last night when we talked about that, it's, you know, more or less, you know, I think some people just don't want to give up their, you know, going by him, but they also want that them or that they, right? We're getting into the whole English that I'm horrible with, but it's a learning curve. And as long as people want to learn and aren't intentionally misgendering, I think at the end of the day, that's what's important. And, you know, I think, you know, I want to say Fro wanted to kind of know specifically, you know, about the misgendering, if I'm not correct. And misgendering is pretty much you've accidentally, you know, you have an individual that goes by he, him, but they look like a girl still, and you accidentally say you know, oh, have you, I don't know what context, but you call them by a she or by a her, right? And that's essentially misgendering. You know, misgendering even on an institutional level, you know, maybe an institution kind of refusing to honor, you know, somebody's even their living name or the name they prefer to go by because they're a male now, they're no longer a female, but you know, they still have that female name, right? They want that male name. So again, it's a very deep conversation in that regard as well. At the end of the day, as I said, it's just important that we're not doing it intentionally and that it's by accident. And I mean, I go by he, him, his, right? So it's one of the easiest ones. And the people that I've accidentally called he, him, or she, her, and they've corrected me, they politely, they'll correct you, right? They don't find it offensive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know when to use them. Like, I thought, what is with this? I mean, I'm going to call Allie she instead of Allie.
No, and
I
it's
didn't
just,
know.
yeah, it's just in how you have the conversation about how you.
But it's when
stuff.
you're talking to somebody else, and this is where I ran into difficulty because I had a friend who was in palliative care, and her grandchild was at the bedside, and I went to spend some time with this grandchild who had grown up as a girl, has now a male voice and dresses as a male, and changed the name. And I didn't have any difficulty sitting with him, but I just kept saying, like, how do you feel? Or you know, nothing came up about the pronouns. Where the difficulty came up with was talking to the aunt about this person. And we tended to go back to calling her as we knew her all
Right.
growing up. I mean, but now in the 20s, all of a sudden she's him.
But again, that's done in
It was just us talking. So, and I mean, nobody was hurt, but it's difficult.
No, and yes, and there's the challenge and practice, and that's all it is, you know, and it just takes time, you know, and I've known people that has transitioned, students, people in my life that have transitioned, and we're bound to make mistakes. Somebody had asked, you know, how do I, when I tell a story about them before they transitioned, how do I refer to them? And we asked them, what do they want to be referred to? You know, if we're referring to stories from the past, right? And the best thing you can do is ask somebody, because it is a personal preference, and we don't expect everybody to understand or accept. It's just the fact that it's a personal preference. You know, we don't expect everybody to, you know, understand everything fully, and just respect the fact that we want to do that, you know, and that's all we're asking. So yeah, no, it's a good question, but valid for, you know, that generation as well too. I hope everybody did get a chance to see the article, because there's a picture in there, and I was kind of hoping Fro would do her hair like that today. I was kind of a little disappointed when you jumped on, because you did have your Fro hawk at one point in time. Yes. And many people in this room might have been there for my 40th birthday, which was dress up like Allie. And Fro Googled how to do a mohawk. And she showed up at the party with her hair straight up. I think you put more aqua velvet with aqua net in it than you ever thought you had.
So Fro, you're gonna have to, I think you need to tell us kind of about that. What, Frohawk? Am I saying that right?
Oh, I don't know, but I
You're a
just
good
wanted to
time.
I wanted to have some fun. I mean, we both wear glasses, but it was just getting the hair up and getting it to stay up. I mean, because my hair is straight, yeah, but it flops down. So,
So
I managed to get it to stay up.
And what happened at the end of the night, it was a contest. As always, my parties always have prizes, and based on audience applause, Fro won the grand prize. You know, we had 3 finalists, a former student of mine, and then my best friend, and then Fro. And so everybody was, Fro, yeah, of course, give it to Fro. And I look at her and I said, well, congratulations, you won a night out with me. And she said, she looked at Will and said, you can have my prize.
Oh,
I can't keep up with her.
Yeah,
and even, you know, even at Evelyn's 50th birthday party that we had to have on Zoom because of COVID, my partner is German, so everybody held up a bottle of Jägermeister, and Fro went, hang on a second. She got out of her Zoom room and went and grabbed 2 bottles and held them up. And of course that picture, that screenshot is epic as well too, because of course she had to have 2 bottles of Jaeger to show.
Well, I had the giant and then the little refill.
What's it going to mention the giant one? You did that to yourself. Fro, you're definitely a good time, and you've influenced that, and many people in this room can attest to you know, me wanting to have a good time all the time, and I definitely get that from you. In terms of visibility, you know,
yeah, I was just gonna touch base on that. Speaking of, I mean,
the Mohawk I'm known for. And it's beneficial, honestly. When I go into high schools, the students know me. I have a blue Mohawk for the most part, and they love it. I get most of the time, great hair, you know, and they remember me, they know me. So that's awesome. It's advantageous that I not only live in a time where I can, you know, do my hair in a Mohawk. I work for an organization that's not going to tell me to straighten up and put your hair down, right? They say, be you, Allie, it's working. So I'm fortunate that way. Whereas growing up, there was no visibility. The internet was in its infancy. I remember, Fro, you were early to adopt the internet in our house. Thank you, the modem. And I took up the phone line. You never got to talk to any of your friends ever again. But we didn't have that. And I can remember I was about 18, 19 when Ellen came out on her show. That was a big deal. Holy cow, that was huge. But before that, there was no real anybody to not only, I'm not talking about modeling yourself after, but just to have somebody to look at and say, oh, they're different too, right? So, and that's why visibility is so important, because it's not making people who we are. Look at how I turned out, and I didn't have any sort of role model or something to idolize after. You know, so that's why I think just visibility is important to remind youth and people, because we've all talked about adults as well too, that came out as grown adults, that, you know, it's okay to represent, to be a role model, if I can, to students, to say, you know what, no, go on, be yourself. You can actually have successes. You can celebrate this in the future. So, you know, every time somebody talks about visibility, and it's just, it can be a life and death issue. You know, Fro and I chatted about, you know, parents keeping their kids home, and she got really upset about it and said, what kind of household, or, you know, you don't know how these kids are going to identify in the future. And for parents teaching them, you know, you're not going to school because the flags were, you know, raised. Well, that's not good for the children's health, right? Mm-hmm. Right. And I know when you said that yesterday, I was kind of like, oh, okay, wow, you're justified, Fro. I understand your frustration with that.
There's just been too many suicides that I'm aware of because of not being able to tell the family that they were petrified. Yeah. And so they took that way out, and it's sad. It's
Yeah.
so sad.
Visibility at the end of the day it's very, very important. And I know, again, you know, you and me and Ali, we've shared a lot of, you know, if we had more time, I think we could probably make a whole day out of the stories that we've shared. But the fact that, you know, being able to be oneself is the
Mhm.
most important thing. And, you know, every time I see you, Ali, you know, I'm like, you know, I see you as just I see you, of course, one, as a friend, and I see you as, you know, our cheerleader, you know, for our club, me as well. And, you know, obviously all the great things that you've done too, you know, you've faced adversity and, you know, but you've been resilient. And I think by being able to, your hair alone, everybody knows you by your hair. Let's be realistic here. And but your hair is your, I can't believe we're talking about hair, but it's that visibility that, like I said, that we're looking at. And your hair is that visibility that, you know, as a horrible example as that is, you know, by Niagara College not telling you to straighten up, Niagara College not only is being that inclusive, you know, diverse, you know, institution and fostering that visibility, but it's like a ripple effect, right? So not only are you allowed to, you know, now be who you are, but then now it's kind of like rubbing off on all of us, right? So we're able to
Absolutely.
do that. So
And I mean, it totally aligns with what Niagara College has announced recently with their EDI blueprint, the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Blueprint. Like they are making, you know, purposeful and planned, you know, changes and movements to just make sure that everybody's included. And that's really what we want, you know, again, going back to what Fro said, we're all human. This is what we need, that it's just everybody's welcome, everybody's included. Your diversity is what makes us better. People learn better from stories and experiences. And if we are open and comfortable to share those stories and experiences, we're all going to be wiser for it. So we
we'll have
just
a
have to
better
make
world.
sure that we make a safe environment, that people are welcome to share their truth, because their truth is what's going to change the world. Fro, I know you've had friends that have changed their attitudes because they know you're the mother of a gay person, right? And it's like, well, then, and they know me. They love me. I'm the funny one, right? And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's changed the way they think, because it's like suddenly, oh, they know somebody. And oh, they care about that person. So really, why am I going to hate, you know? And that's what's really important in terms of visibility, is that everybody knows somebody. And the more people that come out and celebrate and attend Pride, Montebello Park was just packed on the weekend. I mean, it was a fabulous problem to have, because we drowned out those protesters in a second, because there was so much love and people supporting. It was outstanding, blew my mind. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, because there were so many people, including you, including staff, including friends, allies, you know, everybody was there to support. So that's what, and again, it's just so important to give people hope, and especially young people. It's hard enough being a teenager. My goodness, throw hormones into the mix and you're, you know, you're dealing with a lot. So when you're hopeless, that's the last thing you want people to feel. And if I can provide an ounce of hope to 18 students at Delhi District High School, and you know, their teacher will then share this. And so, I mean, it's just really just giving people something to look forward to say, oh, yeah, okay, different is good. I can be different, right?
We're human. We're all human at the end of the day.
That's it. That's it.
It must be
I
awful
would,
to, it must be awful to head out to school knowing that you're going to be picked on and that people hate you. It's got to be horrid for them.
yeah, exactly. And that's why we need teachers like Colleen, and we need schools like Kim Krause's they're raising the flag just to say, hey, you're welcome here. You're included.
Yeah.
You're important. You know, your diversity is celebrated, because that's really what it is. It's just being different, and different is good. And that's what I tell high school kids. I say, just get through high school. Different is good. Trust me, it's going to pay off real soon for you. Okay. And just to give them that hope and reassurance, and is just, if I can get through to one young person, great. That's awesome. And same with you, Brian. So I appreciate, you know, you came out to Pride and volunteered, and it was so advantageous for me to talk to students and prospective students. I go, hang on, the president of our social club is here. Go chat with him to talk to him about a student perspective, how to get involved. You know, we're doing great things, and you know, just having that support is so important. So I see we have a couple more. Any other questions? By all means, throw them out there now, because I think we were just getting to the point of, you know, final thoughts, but would love to address any more questions. Love
I
to
see
throw-
someone made a comment and used the word respect. I think the world has lost respect for one another and one another's rights. And
Yeah, and again, Laura, you're not being lazy or ignorant. Again, you're coming from a perspective. It's just in the fact that it's not a disrespect. If you know, you're not recognizing, you know, outwardly chewing every word that comes out of your mouth to make sure you're not going to offend anybody. You don't have to do that. Again, it's just if you're making the attempt to go, okay, yes, you, based on society's views, you look like a female, however, you identify he, him. And that's just somebody's right to say, okay, that label that society puts between male and female, I go against what the norm is. So again, it's just trying to make people, you know, just feel welcome and accepted for their differences. And again, as long as you're not coming from a point of, you know, malicious, that's what we're
Yes.
trying to just ensure. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Can somebody please unmute Angela for me, please?
Thank you. Sorry, I have a hard time being articulate in print
No,
sometimes.
that's okay.
I just wanted to put out there, because I'm not sure of who all is on the call, but I did want to, because Bruin and Ali, you are wonderful, very visible advocates. But I did want to validate for those people who being outspoken or center of attention is not their temperament. They're quiet people that not everybody has the temperament or energy to be the same advocate that you guys are, but that's not bad. That's them, and that's okay. I don't know if that makes sense, but I never want people to think I shoulda, coulda, woulda, if that's not who they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. On Saturday, Bruin and I were just everybody, we're the, you know, and then there was another young lady from the club. She was actually a student in my class last term. She was there. She didn't talk much. Some girl came and put a bracelet on her, and I said, did you talk to her? And she said, no, I can't talk to her. She didn't talk. And she stood by our little ballot box where we were doing a draw for an Amazon gift card for anybody filling out a ballot. And that was her role. She just went, ballot too. That was more important than anything Bruin and I could have done, because she was there, she was visible, and she was just a friendly face to go, oh, I'm a part of the Rainbow Knights. She wasn't outwardly, you know, and absolutely, because everybody's needed, whether you're an innovator, a generator, you know, like however you put yourself, every opinion is needed. And if we didn't have her there, we would have missed something. So even though she didn't have a voice per se, like Bruin and I often do, her role was invaluable for that day. So everybody's needed, regardless if you're as loud as him or not.
he spoke to me. She spoke
She
to me
spoke
and
to you?
said she appreciated Ali being her teacher.
I'm gonna.
So she did talk.
Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in real quick to Ali. Did you have another question at all, Angela, or?
Oh, no, just observation.
No worries, thank you. So we had one little quick side thing that I wanted to kind of touch base on before, because we're ending shortly. We're getting there. But allyship. I know we had mentioned about allyship, and I think that's one of the big things that we still need to cover. And kind of what that means. You know, I know obviously, you know, one of the, you know, I've spoken about allyship and kind of what I do, you know, with my club. But I'd like to kind of ask you, and even Fro, if she wants to chime in as well, what allyship means to you, and I guess kind of how to be a good ally. What does it mean to be an ally?
Just show up, right, Fro? That's all you got to do. That's all you ever do. You come to every party, you come to every event, you drop money on everything I do. That's an ally for me.
That's what it would mean to me is I support
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. When you took grandma home, you know, like I said, my partner and I moved into your house. You had to welcome two of us basically into your house to help care for grandma. So
Well,
I mean,
you
that was-
and 4 other PSWs.
oh, it was a good mix. But there's, you know, and there we were having dinner together almost every night, you know, with you
Yeah.
and my partner and I, and like it just didn't, it was nothing, you know, like
No.
it's nothing. And I think being a good ally is just honestly, you don't even have to put thought into it. It's
Asking
she's just
questions.
No, you're
Yeah.
just there, for
Yeah.
when you're needed.
I know.
I asked you to do this, you said yes, and then thought about it afterwards and regretted it. And then I asked you to come to Pride, you did, you know, you showed up and brought kids with you. I was like, who are these kids? I don't know. That's awesome.
And I
So
think too,
that's
with allyship too, it's about asking questions. You know, I had that this individual, he was never part of our club, but we had hosted, you know, we called it the Holidays Christmas party that we did last term. If you guys didn't catch the little pun there. But we held it with the anime club, and there was an individual that was part of that club who came up to me and he asked about, you know, I think I'm an ally, but you know, I don't know, he referenced that his family, you know, is very religious, and you know, that, you know, they make, you know, comments that would be homophobic and stuff like that. And he's like, you know, I want to unlearn that and I don't know how. And so I told him to, I'm like, just, you know, having conversations like this, you know, being mindful. I said, you know, to me, I'm like, you know, like I have conversations with my friends all the time. And, you know, I'm always, you know, talking about how, you know, in that conversation, we might joke about something. But if you're having a conversation and you're joking with your friends and you're saying, oh, and in this context, you know, I don't mean any hate in saying this, oh, well, you know, that's gay, right? Well, you might not realize that saying something like that might offend somebody. But being an allyship and asking how to unlearn certain behavior, that's being an ally. And I know we have 30 minutes left, but I'd like to add something real quick. And so the former NCSAC president, which was Sam, she had made a very moving speech at our fireside chat that we had, that was sort of a kickoff to the EDI blueprint as well that Niagara College has announced. And she explained that, you know, she was with some friends and there was something on the internet where a gentleman who was transitioning to a female, right? So we'll refer to her as a her. And her friends kept misgendering this individual. Now, this video was going on about how, you know, this individual was blowing something out of proportion on the internet. But the moral of the story is being an ally can be that, oh, I completely agree that in that video, she is blowing the situation out of proportion. But the Sam, she was not misgendering that individual. And that's allyship, right? By respecting individuals' beliefs. And that's one of the biggest things that I ever took out from her and that speech, that's what allyship is.
No, that's good. No, you're right. Absolutely. And really that's what this is about too, because I mean, everybody on this call here is an ally for a reason. If they aren't identified, then you're an ally. And you know, for years, my sister had a bumper sticker on her car with the rainbow flag behind it, and it said straight but not narrow.
And that's exactly what we need, more people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So having said that, let's open the floor. If I can unmute anybody, I'll happily do that. If we can ask any questions, if you want to hear any more funny stories from Fro, by all means.
Anyway.
There's a couple more in that article if you haven't had a chance to read it. Please.
I guess I should have reread it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It was a wonderful bedtime read, I must say that. I had to, because I was a little groggy, I had to reread certain parts, but
Again, I
Yeah.
wanted to keep it lighthearted at the same time because that's certainly our journey. You know, I don't plan on looking as good as Fro at 80 because I have way too many laugh lines because I've spent too much of my life laughing, which is great. And I hope everybody can definitely try to have fun in everything I do. Some people raise an eyebrow sometimes because, you know, I can have fun anywhere. But I definitely got that from Fro. And again, we celebrate it. We have a good time in everything we do. So
do we have any Niagara College students here that would be interested in learning more about kind of the NC Rainbow Nights?
yeah, actually, Bruin, if you could, do you mind in the chat to everybody, if you could drop your email address, that would be great. I know, Bruin, you are a student, but if I know you're the first one to volunteer to come in and chat. And he can Teams in if there's any teachers or students that think that there's a spot where Bruin could come in and just, you know, introduce the club by all means. So please share your contact information, Bruin, because I think you are an excellent person to be in touch with and to keep the club going, and you're doing wonderful things on campus. So if there's any students on the call that want to learn more about the social club, I think you guys get together, what, Friday nights for the most part?
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
Fridays, little bit more laxed for the summer months because our entire executive team, including myself, sort of work full time. So, but the summer months at Niagara College are, you know, students, it's summer. Students don't want to be on campus. I think enough is said in that. I don't want to be on campus if I don't have to. I want to go home and have a beer.
And Bruin's, he's of age, so we're good. We're good.
Yes, I am of age. It's completely
He's a mature student. It's okay. Yeah,
but yes, we have it's a fun time. I don't think any student, I'm dropping my email, you know, for, you know, any teachers that, you know, want me to come in and chat. You know, I love, you know, on my own time, I'll come in and chat. And students, you know, that are watching and listening, you know, the original students and members that we started the club with, some of that, I think there's about 8 or 9 of us that are very, very close, and we're even next summer planning, you know, going to Toronto Pride. So our circle per se, I think there's about 40 of us in total members, but we all become very close friends, and that's what we do. You know, envision yourself sitting on a stage. We take over the big Niagara College auditorium at the Welland campus. We sit there, we chat for a little bit, and then we play cards, right? We do stuff like that. We play games, game nights with pizza. You know, that's what we just hang out. We have a fun time. That's what we do.
awesome. Cool. Very
Sounds
good. Okay,
good.
Rainbow Nights. Yeah. No, easy, Fro. You're gonna have Fro showing up on
I'll be
Friday night.
joining.
Fro, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add before, you know, if anybody else has any questions while we're waiting? Anything?
Wow.
Was this as bad as you thought it was going to be? It wasn't as nerve-wracking, was it?
No, it was okay.
Good.
But it just, for people to be aware of people in their surroundings and whether they need someone to talk to, someone help, whatever.
That's it. That's all we can do too. Is
Yeah.
just be there. Best thing you can give somebody is time, right? Okay, we have a question from Just Right. Is there anything you would do differently now, Fro or Allie, if anyone close to you came out today? Fro?
Try not to cry. Because I wasn't sad that you said it. Like you say, my concerns, because it had crossed my mind that maybe you were gay.
Mhm.
And so I'd had time to think about it and think what your life would be like. So
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be
For
any
me,
different.
like, even just understanding that people who are married, even though if it's a female and they're married to a man, that doesn't define their sexuality. That's what I've learned most recently, is that, well, just because you're married to the opposite sex means you're a heterosexual. That absolutely does not mean that. What I do, you know, again, when I was an advisor, students would come to me in the summer and go, oh, I'm transitioning this summer, so in the fall, I'd like to be known as this, you know, and for me, it was just, oh, congratulations, welcome to the club. That's the first thing I always say. I'm like, did you get your membership card yet? You know, and just want to make sure. And I do it in a fun way to say, welcome. That's awesome. And just try to celebrate it. So people have come out to me and students in a variety of different ways under a lot of all the different letters. And even when I went to the Rainbow Prom, I just said to one student, we're standing there and I thought, oh, what pronouns do you go by? And they went, well, she, they. But I guess if you're really thinking about it, I probably fall under the asexual guidelines because, and then their friend jumped in and said, I thought you said you were pansexual, asexual. And I just standing there like a tennis. I'm like, oh, I don't even know what I've asked now. I'm in over my head, right? Because it just started a great conversation that halfway through, I had no idea what was being talked about anymore. And I just smile and nod and celebrate. So yeah, for now. And I even asked for, when we were getting ready for this, I said, Fro, if you were raising me now, if today I was your kid, I was your teenager, what would be different, right, about this whole situation, you know? And what do you remember what you said?
No,
You
I'm
said
old. I
we'd
can't
know.
remember anything.
No, you said we'd know. We'd know sooner about me, right? Because neither of us knew. It just wasn't a thing, you know, and no. So yeah, the thing that would be different now would be, oh yeah, we'd know. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I'd like to just chime in real quick here. So we have some people that are leaving. They had to head to some other things. So if there's anybody here that, you know, needs to go off to other commitments, we thank you for your time.
Awesome.
I also see Bellin has raised his hand. So I think maybe, I don't know if it's okay with Ali and Fro if we kind of hand things back over to the library committee and kind of let them thank everybody and kind of go from there.
For sure. Bruin, just before Bellin starts, you did a great job today, my friend. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Fro, I owe
Thank you
you
for having me.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to remark, I think we had all talked about this sort of leading up to it, about the generational approach, and I think how important that visibility is. And that's why I put that question or that statement in there, because we all have, I think, people that are, they're not out yet, or they don't know, or have been for decades or not. So I think something like this to see certainly different generations and the approach to how you all, you know, told your stories today, I think is huge, because you're all very lovable, and you know, you're going to help us all learn more, even if we think we know a lot. But you know, beyond thanking you on behalf of the library, just thanking you on behalf of us as humans. I think Fro remarked on that as you know, we just need to be people and understand each other and listen, I think, is key. And the library knows that I can talk way too much, so I would like to awkwardly transition to anybody else in the library if they wanted to say anything, or if not, we'll all do the awkward Canadian exit at some point, but I will mute myself again.
Thank you for that, Bellin.
Can I chime in and say something?
No, you may not. I'm kidding.
I'm gonna do it anyway. So I wanted to just chime in. My father-in-law is 80 as well. And I think it's kind of an example of his comments of late that have sort of illustrate sort of the progression of how far we're coming as a society and as people. And he has dogs and he does herding and fly ball and all those things. And the place that he was going, there was another gentleman there who had dogs, and they had the similar interest of dogs. And through conversation and dialogue, and keeping in mind it's my 80-year-old father-in-law who vocabulary will be politically incorrect at best, says to me, "Do you know that guy that has the dogs? He's gay. And he used to teach at Niagara College. I would have never known, but he's gay." And I thought, you know, for this man at 80, who, you know, I think maybe Fro, you'll possibly relate, for him to even articulate that and to acknowledge that somebody that he has something in common with could possibly be gay, just to me sort of showed this evolution of maybe where we're coming from, or how far we've come. And
That's right.
and I was actually very encouraged by his comments, because and my wife, her father, was even like, I can't believe my dad said that. But at one time, you know, you'd probably just look the other way and walk away and not even engage in a conversation with
That's right.
someone that was different. But so I found it encouraging that he was able to have that sort of chat with us kind of on an aside. And I thought, okay, there's hope. You're right, Allie, there is hope, and we'll get there. And it's going to be one of those journeys that who knows where it'll take us and what twists and turns there'll be, but we'll get there.
Exactly. Wonderful.
Those are the kind of stories I like to hear.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know we have what, 15-ish, something
Yeah,
like
we
that.
don't have to take up the whole 3 hours, and somebody might have to, I think we're okay, right? If we're done this session, I think a bit early. Everyone's thanking us, which is great. Once again, thank you for inviting us. I know Fro was a little reluctant after she said yes, but I can't thank the library enough about what you and your team and your staff do, not only for Niagara College, but for the community, for organizing this, for your time and your care and your allyship. So thank you very much for everything you folks do. It means a lot.
I'd like to thank you for, you know, having me here. I saw a couple of our members, I think, attend as well. Some of the people that I invited came to support this, and these conversations are conversations that need to be had. And I think someone had mentioned, you know, we didn't cram it all in a couple, 30, 45 minutes. We had a very, very good conversation, and it's part of history too, because I'll be able to look at my old self in like 30 years and be like, oh, I'm not young anymore. But thank you. I mean, you know, on behalf of the NC Rainbow Knights and CSAC as well, it was a pleasure to, you know, have the privilege to moderate, hang out with everybody and chat about great stuff and with great people.
Well, I appreciate that this is being done for all the young people coming up, because it was on the news yesterday, the tragic. If they can't go to high school and be comfortable, that they're afraid. I mean, I enjoyed high school. I had fun. What it must it be like when you're not fitting in and people are picking on you? It's
hard.
There needs to be more understanding and things like this.
And Fro, as an alumni of Port Colborne High, went back and celebrated their 100th year, and I know it was upsetting that you saw that on the news yesterday. So you're right. This kind of conversation will hopefully make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, everyone. Thanks, Belen.
You're welcome. And we will have this recording available. We'll have it on the library website, and we'll try to get the link. Certainly share it out to the panel so they can spread it out. And I know I've had requests mid chat of, you know, send me the link, send me the link. So,
too. I'll be your next request.
This is going to be it's going to make change, and it has made change, I'm sure, already on the panel. So I think unless folks have been nervous while I stretch time, if they have a question while I wait and draw it out. If not, I think that's it. And,
Happy Pride, everybody. If you haven't been to a drag show, go to a drag show. They're fun. They're fun. It's not anything inappropriate. I'm taking Pro to one for sure. So please support our community, support Pride Niagara. Go. If you've never been, don't worry. Go. They're fun. Have a mimosa.
I told my parents that I'd be dragging them out at some point.
Pun intended.
Yep.
There you go.
Awesome. Way to go, Allie.
Happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride.
Thank you once again. Take good care.